Okay, hi and welcome everyone. I want to thank you all very much for joining us. Today we're diving into the self-teaching hypothesis, a powerful concept that explains how readers, especially young and developing ones, grow their vocabulary and fluency largely on their own. We're going to explore the science behind the process and how it fits into learning science generally, and how tools like Readable English can accelerate and make reading more accessible for all students. We're going to keep it short today, a nice and succinct mini training. We know how busy this time of year can be, so we've designed this as a focused session with time for questions and discussion at the end. I'll also add that this is the first in a brand new webinar series where we'll be sharing research-backed strategies and practical tips to support literacy growth. We hope you'll continue to join us as we announce more webinar topics. All right, let's begin. We'll start with a big number, 70,000. That's roughly the number of words a skilled adult reader can recognize. Now think about this. Teachers can only realistically, explicitly teach a small fraction of that. So how do students learn the rest? The answer, of course, comes from the topic we're discussing here today, the natural, powerful process called self-teaching. The self-teaching hypothesis was proposed by reading researcher David Sher. It supports the notion that reading isn't just about memorizing every word. Instead, once learners understand how letters and sounds work, or phonics, they can start decoding new words on their own. Each time they successfully sound out new words, they're not just reading them, they're internalizing the patterns of those words in what's called their orthographic memory. This does two things. First, it allows for effortless, rapid retrieval of previously encountered words. And further, those internalized patterns can be applied to other unfamiliar words, allowing readers to recognize increasingly complex words with ease. To understand more about the self-teaching hypothesis, let's break it down into its core elements. So first we have grapheme-phoneme correspondence, or phonics. So this is understanding how letters and combinations of letters represent sounds. Readers really need a solid understanding of these letter-sound relationships to lay the groundwork for self-teaching. Then, once readers understand how letters correspond to sounds, they can begin to decode unfamiliar words. The term decoding refers to the process of reading a word by sounding it out. David Sher actually refers to this process as phonological recoding, as readers are actually translating the written form of the word back into its spoken form. And the third key component is orthographic memory. So every time a reader successfully decodes a new word, they begin to store the word's letter patterns in their long-term memory. So that is what our orthographic memory is. It's the mental map of written words and written word and the patterns within those words that allows us to recognize similar words without needing to decode them each time. And this is what makes up the foundation for reading fluency and how we grow vocabulary. Now, this is where Readable English comes in. So Readable English is a system that makes every word phonetically transparent, meaning that readers can independently decode any word in a consistent and predictable way. This supports orthographic mapping by allowing readers to accurately decode unfamiliar words, ensuring that they do recognize and then efficiently map that word into their orthographic memory. The level of scaffolding provided by the markup supports readers who need additional support, including multilingual learners and students with reading difficulties. So this visual here shows what we mean by orthographic mapping. The phonetic markup enables students to accurately sound out the word and hear it in their head. As they hear it, they can more easily recall its meaning. They can then connect the meaning of the word to the visual shape and spelling of the word. You can see how a reader might get stuck trying to understand a word if they can't sound it out correctly. If they misread light as ligget or like it, the word doesn't make any sense, so comprehension breaks down. But if they can decode it accurately as light, they're able to recognize the word, recall its meaning, and connect it to the spelling on the page, building their orthographic memory. Now, self-teaching isn't just a beginner strategy, it's a lifelong learning engine. So as we've discussed the word patterns, readers learn these word patterns like prefixes and suffixes, and this knowledge can be applied to unfamiliar words. And over time, it allows the reader to recognize increasingly complex words with ease. As readers continue to decode more words, their vocabulary grows and their fluency deepens, continuing well into adulthood. And of course, with Readable English, this process is even more efficient. Since every word is decodable, readers are able to encounter and master a wider range of vocabulary without being slowed down by the complexities of English spelling. The self-teaching hypothesis isn't something that David Scher has theorized on its own. It fits within a broader concept known as statistical learning. Statistical learning is our brain's natural ability to recognize patterns. In the case of reading, written language is highly patterned. Readers use these patterns to decode new words. The more a reader is exposed to written language, the more they can identify and make use of these statistical patterns to aid in their decoding. Readable English amplifies this statistical learning by ensuring that every word follows consistent, decodable patterns, helping readers internalize them more efficiently. There's another point I want to add in here, that the self-teaching hypothesis underpins the seamless transition to reading in standard English. The scaffold of the markup supports accurate decoding in the early stages, especially for struggling readers and English learners. By enabling independent word reading right away, Readable English accelerates that orthographic mapping, which is the internal process that happens when readers are storing patterns for future recognition. And here's the key. Over time, as readers build their orthographic memory, they no longer need the markup. They're able to read unfamiliar words without it. That is the self-teaching at work. They're growing their word recognition independently long after the scaffold has been removed. Okay, now that we've talked about the theory behind self-teaching, I want to give you a quick experience of actually seeing it in action. We're going to do a short activity together, no pressure, just a chance to see your own brain at work. I'm going to get you to try reading these words on the screen. You can do it out loud or just in your head if you like. Now, you've never seen those words before, and yet I'm assuming you could read them almost instantly. Bame, nabble, revelate, and flinder. That's because you already had those letter sound patterns mapped in your orthographic memory. You didn't memorize those words, you decoded them effortlessly based on your existing knowledge. That is self-teaching, and it's how readers grow their vocabulary every time they meet a new word. Now let's take it one step further. Imagine you're learning to read in a brand new language where you don't have the letter sound patterns mapped in your orthographic memory. I'm going to teach you a new pattern from Dutch. In Dutch, this grapheme, OE, represents the sound oo, oo. It's kind of actually in the middle of two English phonemes, our long oo sound and our short oop sound, which is two moons and hook, for those of you who are familiar with Readable English. So it's a kind of in the middle phoneme of our two English phonemes. So it's oo, oo in the middle. So this word here, meaning tired, is pronounced mu, mu. Now I want you to try reading these words aloud or in your head. What did you notice? Did you need me to teach each word directly? Or did you use the OE pattern to self-teach them? So that's the power of phonics and the foundation of self-teaching. When students have a consistent, transparent system, like with Readable English, they can decode, internalize, and remember new words independently. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here with a quick recap. The self-teaching hypothesis has important implications for how we approach reading instruction. It supports the notion that developing strong decoding skills in the early stages of learning to read is crucial for long-term reading success. Rather than focusing on teaching every single word a child will ever encounter, educators can focus on helping students master decoding strategies. Moreover, the hypothesis highlights the importance of reading exposure. The more students read, the more opportunities they have to engage in self-teaching. And that's why encouraging independent reading, especially of increasingly complex texts, is vital for helping students become skilled readers. And Readable English offers a systematic, supportive way to expose learners to more words, giving them the tools they need to decode and map them into their orthographic memory. This makes the process of self-teaching accessible, efficient, and effective for all readers, especially those who need extra support. I want to thank you all again so much for joining. I hope this gave you new insights into how reading develops and how tools like Readable English can support learners. Now, as we said, we'd love to jump into some questions. If you have thoughts, ideas, or anything you'd like to ask, feel free to drop them into the chat or unmute yourself. And if there are no questions, I hope we see you at our next webinar.
Thank you for the presentation. With the diacritical markings, the glyphs, how long do you estimate it takes for students to learn those?
So we have, through our learning portal in Readable English, we've actually got two paths for learning those glyphs. So for younger and struggling readers, we have more of a path that's very structured and teacher-led, and it takes about 15 hours using that path. So 15 hours. But we also have for then slightly older, independent, and our English language learners, we've got kind of a self-paced rapid version for learning the glyphs, which through our testing and trials with students takes about 2.5 to 3 hours.
There was also a question in the chat. Can a student with first grade level reading use this program?
We have, so our typical age, just that we've started working with and entering the schools market in, is from 2 to 8. So grade 2 students have got kind of a groundwork of the basic letter sound relationships in standard English. But we have had groups of teachers who kind of at school started with grade 2 and wanting to bring it down lower into a grade 1 level. Yeah, it's something we definitely would be able to kind of have the conversation about. We offer through our learning portal kind of what we call the standard English lessons. We do have a pathway for learning those standard sound relationships as well. So it's definitely a possibility. I will add that, so through our website, if you're familiar with it, we offer benchmarking and progress monitoring. That isn't available at the grade 1 level at this stage. So the benchmarking and progress monitoring would still only start from grade 2. Thanks again, everyone. I hope to see you at the next webinars we announce.